right. Hey, Norm, how are you? I just made you the presenter. Mr. Planet, Mr. Moon. Fly me to the moon and let me trade just like a star.
Dale,
I can make a lot of pips on Jupiter and Mars. Hi, Norm.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, did you hear my song?
Hello?
Hi.
I hear you, but I don't know if you can hear me or if I'm in.
I can hear you, Norm.
Can you see my
screen? Loud and clear.
Let's take turns so we can talk. I pushed the button to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes. I see Dee's Cattle daily.
Very good. Okay. Well, then we're good to go.
We are.
Thanks for having me on your show, Dale.
Oh, it's
did you want to make any kind of introduction? Did you want to make any kind of introduction, or should I introduce myself?
Norm Winsky, former option trader, member of the SIBO. I read a story that Norm wrote in his writings near October '87, before the crash. He saw some unstable things and dumped all his memberships, sold all his memberships. So that was a great story, Norm. Are we in that zone again? If you own seats or a lot of assets, would you be lightening up?
Well, it's not quite the same, because back then, the seat and you owned a piece of the exchange, and and the
now they're
membership.
public.
In the long term, a membership, the price of a seat could be rather volatile. Just for example, in '29 at the peak, a New York Stock Exchange seat went for $550,000. That's 1929 money. And at the bottom there, in late '74, early '75, the same seat went for $35,000. So
wow.
I'm a student of financial and economic history, and I knew that, and I thought the way the market was behaving, the stock market was behaving back there in '87, and we had a big lineup of the planets right around August 25th that I'd read about, the Mayan harmonic convergence, where the Mayans base their calendar on the planets, and they pointed out that you were at the end of their calendar era on their calendar on around the 25th of August of 1987, and there was a 6-planet lineup there on that day, and the market was rather bubbly back then, relative to those times. And I decided that it looked like 1929. In the short run, I was right. In the long run, obviously, I was grossly wrong. Right?
Okay.
But anyway,
that's a great story, though.
I was looking to get out of there.
I knew guys who traded seats. So,
but I was, I was on the floor there. I was an old man then. I got there when I was 24, and then 12 years later, I'm 36, 37. 36 years
you wish you were 36 again.
Well, back then, if you were on the floor, I think you know that jumping up and down, yelling and screaming all day is sort of the financial equivalent of being an NFL football player. So, the average NFL player the average NFL player lasts 5 years. So, I was there 12 years. I was getting to be an old man, and it wasn't as much fun as it was when I got there. I was in my 20s. When I got there, and when I got there, the CBOE was a new exchange. They were starving for bodies with a pulse. You got money, you got a pulse, come on board,
Yeah.
Later on, they started getting all the corporate types in there, and they'd have the trading firms hire people, whether based on you got an MBA or you're a chess champion or bridge champion, and they were working for some firm. When I got there, it was all individual, wild and crazy entrepreneur individual types, so a whole different personality people there. And
well, now that you're an Altacocker, what do you see from your rocking chair?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was my long-term dream anyway. I didn't want to be jumping up and down, yelling and screaming all day long. I mean, I enjoyed it for a while. It was fun, but
now you just rock back and forth real fast, right?
Exactly. You could be in a nice soft chair, have your feet up, That's it. That was my long-term dream, and I wanted to get out of Chicago and go where the sunshine was. So I ended up a few years later moving to Florida, and that's where I am now.
Okay, buddy.
All right. Anyway, so I got most of my life I've been looking at the markets. I started looking at the markets when I was 15 years old. I'm 66 now. So it's a long time. I was on the floor there of the CBOE and the Chicago Board of Trade over a 12-year period. Yep. So, and I was there. Yep, there's that. I hope you got to watch that video, by the way, sent out last week. That was great. It was talked about the last bastion of free markets during the crash. 87 was the Board of Trade's maxi contract, which was on the MMI, Major Market Index.
Yeah,
That was the only thing. That was the only thing trading in the middle of that day. I was trading that upstairs. I had sold my seats, so I was trading from upstairs. And a fellow that I know, Blair Hall, that tells on the video how he went down to the pit there and bought the bottom. I was buying. I didn't. It wasn't as good as he was. He paid $285 at the bottom. I remember paying $290. But then $5 was nothing. That was that was like a tick. It was, right. And it was $250 a handle. So
right.
So it's that thing traded several times back and forth in $100 range that day. So that was $25,000 range on one contract.
Nice.
Yep. Anyway, so let's get to the markets here. I was last on your show, I believe, on October the 13th. I talked about I think the new moon. I should have checked.
Yeah, you're talking lunar cycles last time.
Absolutely. Let's see. There was a new moon coming up on I was on there on Friday the 13th, right? Last on the Friday the 13th. We had a new moon coming up on the 19th. I didn't check that. I apologize. You can go back and check. Well, we'll probably be able to see that on the charts I'm showing you. But I focused on early November, had the folks gone and done their homework and researched the moon. Then they would have known that there was a full moon in early November on the Saturday the 4th. And so we're going to look at that time. That's where I'm going to focus on. And so, for example, there was a full moon in the sign of Taurus the Bull. And you might think that might have something to do with cattle. And so I put the cattle chart there. And there you go. You got to, what we look for is the market's at an extreme. So if look at that, you got a rally all the way from August till early November. And then we have a full moon in Taurus the Bull. And look what happens. There you go. Did you sell the exact high? No. You were off by 20 points. And the cattle is, it's almost nothing. It's like $80. That was a high bar. 2 bars before on the daily chart. But then this is even better for traders because you get to sell against the previous high. And this high was only 20 points lower, which for the folks that don't know about trading cattle, each handle is $400. 20 points would be 1/5 of the handle, or about $80. So that's not too bad. You get to risk very little money there, and then it dropped over the next couple of weeks. This chart here is because we don't care about what's coming up in cattle. I'm not on my list anymore, but just to show you what happened, it dropped 8 handles. That's $3,200. Every handle is $400. So that's a nice trade. Okay.
Nice.
When do you agree?
Yes, very nice.
Okay, cotton, here's what you don't want to see. If you have a market, this was on my list to watch. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to have a good trade. And so if the market is just going sideways like this cotton chart was, what cotton market was, then don't do anything. So we're looking for something like this where you have market gets to an extreme and just goes up, 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 or down, down, down into one of our key dates. Then you have a good chance for a reversal. All these things are sort of subject to Newton's law. For every action, there's an opposite equal reaction. So if the market's going sideways, chances are it's going to be a mirror image from our key date, and it's just going to continue going sideways. So you don't want to do anything there. Take a pass. Here's wheat. Here's how little action and reaction you need. So wheat had a tiny little rally here. The greens are all in the slumber mode because I hate the fundamental.
After the harvest.
But it is harvest time. It is harvest time. Pretty soon the harvest will be done, and I like trading the greens in the wintertime when nobody knows what's going on. It's like all the information flow stops and everybody's blind, and then the greens kind of go back to fluctuating on the lunar cycle. So anyway, you had a little rally here in the wheat, and there's your top right there, and then you could have pulled out maybe 5 or 10 cents. You're not going to retire on that, but still it demonstrates that this stuff works pretty well even in a narrow range. Here's the gold. It's totally flat line on page 2. I'm on page 2 if anybody's following along, and you can see gold was totally flat line, so you wouldn't want to do with that. Here's bonds though. Bonds had a nice rally into the full moon, and like the next day or so, they topped out and had a nice drop.
Yeah.
Here's your dollar. All you folks are currency traders, I think. So here you go. The moon nailed the top in the early part of November. There you go. There's your full moon on the Monday the 6th. You know, with the full moon occurred on Saturday, so you have to look for the next regular trading day. And there's your high there, right on the 6th of November.
Perfect.
Yeah. And you notice that we don't have to look at moving averages. We don't have to look at oscillators. Don't look at the news. It's not for us. The reason why, only the seller buying. This is working on millions of years of human entrainment. In other words, the human brain is trained to follow the moon, whether you even know it or not. That's why these markets go up and down with the moon and the planets. You know, we're all part of nature. We can't help it. Okay, here's your British pound. I put lots of currencies in here for you folks, and there you go. You're near the bottom, maybe a one bar late on the pound. You still would have been very close to the bottom there. And I don't think you would have had to risk very much on that trade before it popped up. You see that?
Nice call on euro, because a lot of people were short on there because they thought we had broken down from a head and shoulders top. So
there you go. The moon is 1 day early from the low of the month. You see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you wouldn't have had not much difference between that day and that day. So even if you bought there, I don't know, you tell me how many pips or whatever that might be. I don't think it was very many, right? I don't think
50.
you would have had to take. Okay. Is that a lot or is that a small amount?
On a full contract, that's 500.
All right. You fasten your seatbelt, Dale, because this gets really exciting. We went from good to better to best Japanese yen. I couldn't quite put the arrow there because I would have blocked the 6th for November 6th. It nailed the exact bottom on the end. Like,
how do you know when to get out?
I just use these simple trend lines. That's what I. What's
but
that?
on a winner, yeah, I mean, these turning points are good for entries. What about the exits?
Sometimes, well, the next lunar event would be, these are full moons. Well, these were all full moons. So guess what's coming up? We got a new moon coming up here in this weekend, tomorrow.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Okay. Yeah.
All right.
But just on the very short-term basis,
So
I just put these simple trend lines.
You'll let the lunar cycle complete for an exit.
I'm sorry, say again.
You'll let a lunar cycle complete from a full moon.
But not necessarily. The first thing is preserve your capital. And so if you get into a trade, the first thing you want to do is, if once it gets going your way, you want to draw a simple trend line. And if it breaks that trend line, you get the hell out, right?
Okay. So you trail your stops on technicals. All right.
Preserve your profits, right? Preserve your, let your profits run, cut your losses, right? Absolutely. Okay, let's look into the future. I'm gazing into my telescope and crystal ball, or whatever you want to call it. And thanks for the segue from that gentleman ahead of me there, right?
There are a lot of
nice
skeptics.
He probably didn't realize it, but he provided a nice introduction for me there. A nice segue.
Well, that's because we're all connected. It was providence.
There you go. It was in the
stars.
Right. I'm thinking of the global cosmic subconscious, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so here we go. So let's look at the future. I'll go to look at the future. Sometimes we go back and look at previous cycles. In August, we had the big solar eclipse go across the middle of the U.S. And so I went back and I wrote about this, and I don't know if I was on I forget if I was on your show back in August or not, but I wrote about it in my letter and talked about it on some other shows and maybe your show, that we had the big solar eclipse going across the middle of America, and this has not happened exactly that way before. You had to go back to 1918 to find a similar pattern. And during that time, the ancient astrologers were very keen on these eclipses. They felt that not only did it could have an immediate effect, usually not so good. They forecasted bad things when the eclipse occurred, but it could also have sort of a shadow effect for the next 6 months, where something near that path or along that path, bad things could happen. Back in 1911, we had the eclipse in June, and during that time, time period, we had a pandemic we called the Spanish flu, which killed 30 million people.
It
Okay.
actually, I believe, ended World War I because the troops were too ill to fight.
I don't know
It
about that,
happened.
but that's an interesting idea. If you know that for a fact, that's a very interesting idea. I never heard of that. I do know my wife's, at least one of my wife's grandparents, and possibly both, two of them, died as a result of the Spanish flu, and her mom grew up an orphan as a result.
Huh.
Yep. And there we go. So now we go back one more cycle to 1811. Why should we care about 1811? Because 1811 gave us the New Madrid earthquake at what we call the New Madrid Fault. What is that? There's a tiny little town on the Mississippi River on the Missouri side called New Madrid. Back in 1811, we had the biggest earthquake in U.S. recorded earthquake in U.S. history. And it was so big that after the earthquake was done, the little town of New Madrid was not on the banks of the Mississippi, it was in the Mississippi. And it changed the course of the mighty Mississippi River. The earthquake was so big, they said it rang church bells in Boston 1,300 miles away. The earthquake was so big that they say that it reversed the course of Mississippi for 7 or 8 minutes. Mississippi was flowing the other way.
Yeah, and thank God it wasn't a highly populated area back then.
Then, exactly. But now you got several major population centers not too far from there. Obviously, St. Louis is probably the closest. And you got Indianapolis and Chicago, are all not just a few hundred miles away,
So you think there might be something this weekend?
Well, this is just an experimental idea. Obviously, it's not scientific because we only have a couple of cycles, lunar solar eclipses that went anywhere near the U.S. That the one in 1811 was actually over the U.S. is over North America. But still, so the pattern is 90 days. If we were to repeat that pattern, though, 90 days later, the eclipse was on August 21, 2017. 90 days later, that's a key harmonic in cycles of 1/4 of the 360 is 90. 90 days is roughly 90 degrees of the motion of the Earth around the sun. And that would take you to November the 20th, which is on, that's on Monday. And we have a new moon over the weekend, so it could easily be fine-tuned to maybe perhaps this weekend on the new moon. So we're going to look to see if we have any kind of big event here over the next several days. Right. I just thought interesting to watch. I don't know if you can make any money on that or not. Maybe go on Lloyd's of London there and buy some kind of disaster insurance. Be along the risk, rather than short the risk. All right. Anyway, so now let's look ahead here. Over the weekend, we have the new moon in Scorpio. We have our general usual suspects for the new moon, full moon, which are your financials, your grains, and precious metals. We want to watch those areas where we might have those markets might be at an extreme. Then we also add whatever sign that moon is in to indicate possible extra markets. And so we'll have cocoa, hogs, and bonds. Okay, we also have some things happening with the U.S. cycles based on the beginning of the U.S. on July the 4th, 1776. And again, we have an extra kicker here for the U.S. stocks, T-bonds, and the U.S. dollar. And then on Tuesday night, the 21st, we have Neptune doing something called turning direct. It's called a station point relative to the Earth's motion to the other planets. As you go out in the night sky, it appears, there's your operative word, it appears that the planets on occasion individually stop their motion and reverse their direction. And the rule is that when the planets change trend, the markets change trend, and each planet is tuned to a particular commodity. And in this case, Neptune is oil. And the stock market has no filters, so it's tuned to everything. So it's anything important will affect the stock market. That's why I didn't bother to put the stock market in here, because I did not get into the things that I have in my November letter and when I was on your show in October, because I didn't have it then because I hadn't done the letter yet. Anyway, so then we're going to look ahead here. Now we're in the super moon, or excuse me, the technical term is a syzygy, where you have two or more cycles line up. In this case, it's a lunar syzygy. or supermoon, when the moon, about every 14 months, we have a full moon at perigee. Perigee is that the moon is not going around the Earth, not in a circle, it's elliptical. And so there's a point at which the moon is closest to the Earth, and there's a point at which the moon is farther from the Earth. And about every 14 months, these cycles line up. And you get the half cycle, the opposite cycle, 7 months later. So it alternates, you know. So we're coming and we're phasing into the moon, full moon, getting close to the Earth, and that will be culminating here at the end of the month. I've added December 1 on the tacked it on the end of November because it lands on a Friday. And that weekend, we have not only the full moon at perigee at its closest point. When you go out in the night sky and look at the moon, it'll look like extra big moon because it'll be closer. And we also have Mercury. One of my big things is when the planets go turn direct or retrograde. That's called a station point. And again, when the planets change trend, the markets change trend. For you get a lot of smaller cycles lining up together, that can turn into a really big deal. For example, back on
one of our members is saying your date that you have for the oil turn coming up, that's also an OPEC meeting.
I did not know that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times. I can't tell you how many times that happens. I look at the planetary cycles and say, you should go look at this market on that day. And then somebody says, did you know that such and such a news is happening, that going to happen then?
Yeah.
And I go, no, thanks for telling me. You know?
Yeah. Someone else
Anyways,
is saying,
what's that again?
Another comment from Martin. Interesting to listen to Norm Dale. I remember a call last month, he mentioned a turn which was quite perfect in time. One day, if I remember. Question is, if that kind of turn, or short term as it was, lasted 2 days, and the market reversed up again, I don't know what the question is. Your timing on the call was good. It was just a 2-day trade. So your trades, you know, what's the difference how long they last, right? How long, if you catch a turning point, you should at least be profitable and never let winners turn into losers.
Exactly.
Okay, go ahead, Norm.
Yes, sir. So anyway, we have a coincidence here. This is pretty amazing. We have both the full moon at perigee, like I said, that only occurs every 14 months, and coinciding with, I think, 8 hours. I just looked this up a little while ago. 8 hours difference between that and Mercury turning retrograde. That's a rare event. We had a cousin to this, sort of, back on May 18th, 19th of 2015, and I put that in my letter and went on some interview programs. I think you were on a sabbatical then, Dale, if I'm not mistaken. And so I said, this looks interesting. We have the new moon. It was a new moon within 1 day of Mercury turning retrograde. I said, this looks very important. And it turned out that was the high of the year for the stock market. So there you go. So we get some of these smaller cycles all piling up together. They can turn into be as big as the big cycles, as bigger than the bigger cycles, you know.
Okay.
So there we go. So we have.
Why don't you tell people about your course?
I will do that now. That's a great segue there. You're a segue master today, Dale. Okay. So there we go. The next page is all about how they can get free stuff and learn how to do this. It's just all this stuff looks complicated because it's different. You've probably never saw anything like this before, I'm going to guess. And so it looks complicated, but once you get acclimated to it, used to it, nothing in my work is beyond a fifth grader. You don't have to be smarter than a fifth grader to do any of this stuff. You don't need any advanced math, no formulas, no fancy software. I give you the dates. I tell you how to do this. I do Astro. I do Fibonacci time cycles. I do fractals. All the stuff I showed you fractals. I think the last time I was on, where the correlation was amazing with some of the currencies and the fractal patterns that you get the whole year mapped out in advance. You know, it's amazing. And I could teach a 10-year-old to do this stuff and some of this stuff in 10 minutes. You know. All right, so you get the free class to share with you all the major methodologies that are in my letter and how I do that. And you get an individual class, 5 to 6 hours. It's all free with your money back guarantee, right, Dale? That was a joke, Dale. free
it?
with a money back guarantee. You see? Okay.
Oh, the free, yeah, yeah, you'll wire the refund. Okay.
All righty. Anyway, so it is free, and then you get the letter, current letter, and we go through the letter and learn all the different methodologies in there, how you can use these techniques to forecast the markets in advance, so you're not driving your car by looking in the rearview mirror. You know, it's tough to drive your car. Always looking in the rearview mirror.
We have one more question from the audience. You
Yep.
live in Naples. Did you see anything astronomically that warned you about the hurricane that you lived through?
No, sir.
Okay, there's your answer.
Well,
All
that
right.
was my theory is that was a once in a generation hurricane that hit Naples. I won't go into, I have theories about, you know, think I'm ideally situated here. If you've got to be in Florida, this place has been one of the places with, for relative to where we are, had a fewer number of hurricane hits than most places in Florida, you know.
Okay. Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
The
Okay.
last time
Well,
we had a direct hit like that was, I think it was 1960, 61. I think it was called Hurricane Camellia. And this was a tiny little town. Now, this was like, I don't even know how, I know when I first got here in the early 80s, 5,000 people were in Naples. It was, that was small, and that was in the 60s. You'd probably even a lot smaller then. So then they got hit by the storm surge then, you know.
right.
Anyway, I was told that we were going to have 16-foot storm surge here, so I ran away to a friend on the East Coast, on the East Coast of Florida. I'm on the Gulf side, you know.
Right.
When I got home,
Well,
when I got home, my neighbors said that they had a little bit of water in the street. One neighbor said the water came up onto their driveway, and then that was it. Never got to their house, and the
lucky.
power was. And in my neighborhood here, we got very lucky. That power was back on in 3 hours, is what my neighbors told me.
Well, Mazel Tov. And Norm, I want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Have a
You
great
too.
holiday.
And you know what Mazel Tov, Dale? Do you know what Mazel Tov means?
Lucky stars.
It means good stars, right?
Good stars. Okay. Well,
Good
good stars to you and your family.
Thank
and
you.
a happy Thanksgiving, Norm.
Right.
And,
So let's just wrap up how they get a hold of me here. You can get a hold of me. And
Sure.
here's my phone in Florida, and you can call me on Skype, norm.winski, norm.winski. You can call me, or there's my email address on the screen there. And so there we go. And so you can call me right away, because I can only accommodate about 6 to 8 people a month, and it fills up fast. And I'm done for November, so you need to get in line for December. So the December letter will come out over the December 1 weekend, and you'll be in the queue. You'll be right at the top, at the front of the line there, to get your free class, individual class on Skype.
Okay, buddy.
Okay, thanks a lot for having me on. I hope I can help some of your folks improve their trading.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting quill to have in your trading arsenal. Norm Winski, thank you. Face, thank you. Just want to leave you guys with Guppy trying to break down under 48. It may try and recover, but I'm looking for lower levels. And I want to thank everyone. Hope you enjoyed our guests this week. I have another very good lineup next week. Spend a lot of time trying to give you good content. You know you're going to get it for at least 60 minutes every day with Face. I want to thank Blake and Steve, and a special appearance by Nicola Duke today, and great calls by the team. You're very welcome, Tom. And most of all, my friends, money comes and goes. Time is gone forever. Make it count. You're welcome, Elena. And above all, don't just count your pips, count your blessings. Same to you, Kevin. Adios, my trading warrior brothers and sisters. And you too, Elena. And thank you again, Norm.
Thank you, Dale.